You ever look at a dead game franchise and wonder, what happened to it? Why did it die?
Did I not buy enough?
One popular franchise I always wondered this about were the Rogue Squadron games.
Back in 1998, Factor 5 released Rogue Squadron on the Nintendo 64 and PC. It was an arcade-style flight sim where you would go through multiple missions trying to complete certain goals to be rewarded with different levels of medals. The real focus of these games was just how good the flying felt, the feeling you got from flying these iconic fighters and blowing up TIE fighters. After all, what else would a Star Wars fan really want?
Okay, you got me.
The game saw you play as Luke Skywalker, going through various missions as, you guessed it, the leader of Rogue Squadron. From X-Wings to V-Wings, yes, those are real, you get to control all of your favorite ships from the Star Wars universe. Even some that you shouldn't know about yet. Though there were some caveats. The game contained no space missions, as well as no missions showing iconic moments from the movies, because Lucasfilm was being hesitant with that at the time, apparently.
What the hell is this then, Lucasfilm?
There are 2 unlockable bonus missions showing the Trench Run and the Battle of Hoth, but these hidden levels would soon become staples of the entire series. Rogue Squadron was a hit, notably for how good it looked. The game was praised for its visuals, being one of the games to make use of the Nintendo 64's expansion pack to increase its resolution. It's been cited many times as one of the best looking games on the console, a compliment that would be extended to the other 2 games in the series.
Rogue Squadron 2 was a launch title for the GameCube, and it was beautiful.
This game was easily the best showcase of what the GameCube was capable of, and a must-buy for anyone grabbing the GameCube at launch. This time around, the game not only gets its space battles finally, but also its important movie moments as well. The first level is literally the attack on the Death Star. Factor 5 also added plenty of new ships for you to fly, as well as even getting Dennis Lawson to return as Wedge. A fact that was somehow more celebrated here than it was in The Rise of Skywalker. The story here is split between Luke and Wedge, though much like the last game, they do add in some really excellent bonus levels as well, including 2 where you get to play as Darth Vader.
But even with all these additions, they still weren't done yet. Just 2 years later, Rogue Squadron 3 Rebel Strike released, and in addition to having one of the best openings to a video game ever, it also really blew the other games out of the water. At least, with its ambition.
Even better looking graphics, more of the same excellent dogfighting from Rogue Squadron 2. Oh, and now, how about ground vehicle sections with speeders and walkers? Oh, and also, how about on-foot levels too with gunplay and lightsaber combat? Also, how about we throw in a versus mode, and what about a co-op camp? Sorry about that. Anyway. Now, I won't lie, sometimes too much ambition can lead to some less than stellar results. The core mechanics here that were lifted from Rogue Squadron 2 are still great here, but the additions have various levels of quality. The ground vehicle levels are pretty good in my opinion, but that's to be expected because this isn't exactly Factor 5's first brush with those.
Okay, how many Episode 1 tie-ins are there?
The multiplayer is tons of fun, and the co-op literally has the entire Rogue Squadron 2 campaign in it, which is hours of additional multiplayer content. But this does, of course, leave me with one section that I have yet to talk about. Yeah, the on-foot sections are kinda trash. You just mash the attack button and run around, and if they hand you the smallest amount of platforming, good luck! Still, I respect the attempt. Factor 5 wanted to try and make these games full of content, whether that would be tons of bonus levels, levels that tied into the prequels, even full-on ports of older arcade games stuffed into the extras section. Hell, they added a fucking Buick!
Which is why it's no surprise that after the release of Rebel Strike, Factor 5 went to work on the next title in the Rogue Squadron series, which is... what the fuck?
The series seemingly died after 2003, but behind the scenes, there's a sad story of several cancelled games. First up is Star Wars Rogue Squadron, a spin-off where you would play as Darth Vader rather than Luke and Wedge. This never made it past the pitching stage because it apparently lost out to a game where you play as Chewbacca?
Well, since that game went out, I am sure that it ended up being a much better and critically acclaimed... God damn it!
After this, Factor 5 pitched a remastered Rogue Squadron collection for release on the Xbox, with online multiplayer planned for it as well. Sadly, a year later, LucasArts did what LucasArts does best, and cancelled the game. It was halfway through development as well, and they just killed it.
After releasing their PS3 exclusive game, Lair, which... it was Lair, Factor 5 went to LucasArts to ask to revive the Rogue Squadron collection, this time as a Wii game.
Work began on this new game, now titled Rogue Leaders, or Rogue Squadron Wii, in 2007. The game would have remastered versions of all 3 entries, along with new modes that took advantage of the Wii's features. Even the Wii Fit, apparently. These included a speeder bike racing mode and a lightsaber dueling mode. The speeder bike mode doesn't seem to be anything too special, just some standard racing around planets like Tatooine and Andor. Honestly, it kinda reminds me of the Kinect Star Wars racing mode if you remember that, but I'm sure actually having a controller is better than whatever the hell this was. The lightsaber fighting mode, on the other hand, that looked sick. It seemed to let you use characters from the movies like Vader, Luke, and Palpatine in all sorts of different locations you know and love. But what really caught me off guard was that you could just stick your Mii's heads onto any of them. And to think, I could have finally taken my revenge. The game was looking very promising, so what happened? Well, while developing this game, Factor 5 had also picked up a Superman game for Brash Entertainment, who went bankrupt in 2008. For very 2008 reasons. Factor 5, instead of just deciding to stop making the game, started to pay for its development themselves while trying to find a new publisher for it. Sadly, they couldn't find a new publisher and ran out of money to continue funding development themselves, even to the point of just not paying their employees for 2 months. I'd remember that, it's gonna be important later. Crazily enough, though, as Factor 5 entered bankruptcy, they had a backup plan. They sold off all their assets to a new company called Blue Harvest, which was comprised of former Factor 5 employees. After renaming themselves to White Harvest for some reason, they managed to finish development of Rogue Leaders.
Now there's only one thing standing in between them and releasing the game, and that was lawsuits.
Yeah, do you remember all those employees that weren't being paid? They were suing for the money they were owed, and LucasArts didn't want to be attached to that PR nightmare, so the completely finished Rogue Leaders was just abandoned. We never heard anything about it, ever again. Well, not exactly. Back in 2017, the former president of Factor 5 did an interview with IGN, and during that interview he said that he would love to see the game get a release on the Switch.
My immediate dream would be actually to do to first port basically what we had on Rogue Squadron Wii to the Switch.
And honestly, with Disney's new strategy with Star Wars games, as well as the massive amount of ports of older Star Wars games coming to Switch, it doesn't seem so impossible these days. Then again, what sucker would pay tons of money for games that they already own on older consoles?
I don't have a problem.